These aren't mistakes. 47 times? That's a career.
The first thing you need to know about my wife, Jessica, is that she always said I was too trusting. Turns out she was right, but not in the way she meant. I trusted her completely right up until my 14-year-old son, Sam, walked into my home office last Tuesday evening, holding her tablet with a look on his face like he'd just watched someone kick a puppy. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking the way it does when he's trying not to cry, "why is Mom wrestling with that guy in her underwear?" I used to think my wife's only secret was sneaking kale into the chili when she thought I wasn't looking. Shows what I know about anything. My name is Alex Kavanaugh, and I'm a structural engineer. I build things that last, things that can withstand pressure and stress and time. I thought I'd built a marriage like that too. Solid foundation, good materials, proper reinforcement. But as I stared at that tablet screen, watching my wife of 16 years doing things with Grant Pritchard that she hadn't done with me in about 5 years, I realized I'd been working with faulty blueprints from the start. Grant, the Grin Pritchard, local real estate hotshot, drives a white Range Rover like he's conquering Africa instead of selling McMansions in suburban Connecticut, always flashing those perfect veneers at charity events and town council meetings. The kind of guy who calls everyone buddy and slaps backs like he's running for mayor. The video was crystal clear. Hotel room at the Marriott downtown. Jessica wearing the black lingerie I'd bought her for Christmas. The set she claimed made her feel silly. She didn't look silly writhing underneath Grant while he grunted like a caveman who'd just discovered fire. She looked like she was having the time of her life. "Go to your room, Sam," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Do your homework. I'll handle this." Sam nodded and bolted, probably grateful to escape whatever nuclear explosion was about to happen. Smart kid. Gets that from me, apparently, since his mother was too busy getting her brain screwed out by the local Donald Trump wannabe to contribute much to his education lately. I sat in my office for 3 hours that night going through every file on that tablet. Jessica had been careless, or maybe she wanted to get caught. The folder was labeled personal training with a little winking emoji. Real subtle, Jess. 47 videos. 47. Dating back 8 months. Hotels, his place, our place when I was at work conferences. Even my own office during one of her surprise visits last month. She'd bent over my drafting table while Grant took her from behind, knocking over the picture of our kids in the process. I always believed in backing up important files. Call it an engineer's habit. By midnight, I had copies of everything on 3 different drives, plus uploaded to a secure cloud account. Evidence secured, foundation laid. Time to start building. Jessica was in Boston for another consulting project when I made my move. She'd been taking a lot of trips lately, which made perfect sense now. Grant had developments in 5 different states. Plenty of opportunities for site inspections. I took a week of vacation time and got to work. 16 years of marriage, and it took me exactly 4 days to dismantle it all. I'm good with logistics. First, the money. Joint accounts emptied except for the minimum balance. My name on everything anyway, since Jessica's credit was shot from her compulsive shopping habit. The house was in my name too, bought before we married with money from my father's life insurance. Jessica always resented that, said it made her feel like a guest in her own home. Well, now she could feel like an evicted tenant. Pete Romano helped me move Jessica's stuff out. Pete's my oldest friend, ex-cop turned private investigator, built like a linebacker but with the soul of a philosopher. He specializes in divorce cases now, says it pays better than busting pills dealers and the hours are more flexible. "You sure you want to go scorched earth on this?" Pete asked, loading Jessica's designer clothes into boxes. "Might be easier to just file papers and split everything 50-50. "Pete," I said, taping up a box of her romance novels, "when you find termites in your house, you don't negotiate with them. You exterminate them and rebuild." "Fair enough. What about the kids?" "Sam and Lila are staying with me. I've got documentation of Jessica's extracurricular activities. No judge is giving custody to a woman who films explicit videos in the family home." Pete whistled low. "How many videos we talking about?" "Enough to start her own OnlyFans account." By Thursday, the house was stripped of every trace of Jessica Kavanaugh. I'd even had the locks changed and installed a security system. The divorce papers were filed along with a request for an emergency custody hearing based on evidence of adultery and moral unfitness. The flash drive with highlights from Jessica's personal training sessions was sealed in an envelope marked Exhibit A. Nothing says welcome home like echoing walls and divorce papers. Jessica's key didn't work Friday night. I watched through the security camera as she stood on the front porch, fumbling with her purse, confusion slowly morphing into panic. She rang the doorbell 14 times before I finally opened the door. "Alex, what's going on? Why doesn't my key work?" She looked good. Tan from her business trip, hair freshly styled, wearing a new dress I'd never seen before. Probably bought it with money from our joint account to impress Grant. Well, our account was down to $27 now, so her shopping sprees were officially over. "Your key doesn't work because you don't live here anymore," I said, handing her the envelope. "Congratulations, you're being served." Jessica's face went through about 6 different emotions in 10 seconds. Confusion, anger, disbelief, fear, and finally that wounded look she always used when she wanted sympathy. The same expression she'd worn when I caught her accidentally flirting with the neighbor last year. "Alex, what is this? I don't understand. Open it." She tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The divorce papers were on top, but the real surprise was underneath. I'd printed out still frames from 5 of her best performances with Grant. Nothing from the adult movies themselves, just clear shots of their faces, so there'd be no doubt about identity. Jessica's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the front steps, staring at the photos like they were written in a foreign language. "Where did you get these?" "Your tablet. Sam found your little movie collection. Thanks for traumatizing our son, by the way. Really adds that extra touch of class to the whole situation." "Alex, I can explain." "No need. The videos explain everything perfectly, especially the one where you and Grant are role-playing in my office. Nice touch using my drafting table. Really shows respect for the marriage." Jessica started crying then, the ugly kind of crying where mascara runs and your nose gets all red. But I'd seen her fake tears too many times over the years. She cried when she wanted a new car, cried when she wanted to go on expensive vacations, cried when she got caught lying about the credit cards. "Please, Alex, it was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." 47 mistakes, Jess. That's not a mistake. That's a career change. I stepped back inside and started to close the door. "Wait, where are the kids? I need to see my children." "The kids are safe. You'll see them when the court says you can see them. Under supervision, probably. You can't keep me from my own children. Watch me." I closed the door and engaged the deadbolt. Through the security camera, I watched Jessica pound on the door for another 10 minutes before finally giving up and driving away in her BMW. The BMW that was about to be repossessed, since I'd stopped making the payments. She always said she was a great multitasker. Time to see how good she was at juggling unemployment, homelessness, and a custody battle all at once. Pete's office smells like coffee and broken dreams. It's above a Chinese restaurant in the old part of town, the kind of place where the elevator makes noises like it's planning to give up any day now. But Pete's good at what he does, and he owes me a few favors from when I helped him through his own messy divorce 3 years ago. "So what's the plan?" Pete asked, pouring whiskey into 2 coffee mugs. "You've got the evidence, you've filed the papers. Seems like your work here is done?" "Not even close," I said. "I want to know everything about Grant Pritchard, how long this has been going on, who else knows about it, what kind of business he's really running, and I want to know if Jessica's done this before." "That's going to cost you. I've got money now that I'm not funding my wife's affair." Pete grinned. "Fair point. Give me a week." It took him 4 days. Grant Pritchard, 44 years old, divorced twice, no kids. His real estate company was doing well on paper, but Pete found some interesting discrepancies in his tax filings. Nothing illegal, just creative accounting that suggested his profit margins were thinner than he liked people to believe. More interesting was his pattern with women. Pete had talked to 3 of Grant's previous girlfriends, plus his second ex-wife. Same story every time. Grant was charming, generous with expensive gifts, great in bed, but he had a wandering eye and a taste for married women. The thrill of the chase, the challenge of seduction, the ego boost of stealing someone else's wife. "He's a collector," Pete explained, spreading photos across his desk. "Married women are his specialty. Lower risk than single women who might want commitment, higher reward because of the taboo factor." "What about Jessica? How long has this been going on?" "Best I can figure, about 10 months. Started at some charity function where she was doing PR work for her consulting firm. Grant was the guest speaker, talking about community development. They exchanged business cards. He called her a few days later about a consulting opportunity. And she fell for that line? Alex, your wife was ripe for picking. You'd been working 60-hour weeks on that hospital project. She was feeling neglected, probably a little bored with suburban life. Grant swooped in with flowers and compliments and promises to make her feel special again. I thought about that. Jessica had been different over the past year, more critical of our house, our friends, our life together, always talking about other couples who seemed more successful, more adventurous, more alive than us. I'd assumed it was a midlife crisis. Turns out it was just regular old-fashioned adultery. What about his current situation, business, personal life? He's leveraged to the eyeballs on 3 different developments. If the market softens or he loses a major client, he's in trouble. Personal life is complicated. He's got a reputation around town now, and not the good kind. Word's getting out about his hobby. Good. What else? Pete pulled out another file. This is interesting. Grant's got a guy named Marcus Webb who handles his dirty work. Intimidation, cleanup, making problems disappear. Nothing violent, just pressure tactics. Threatening lawsuits, spreading rumors, that kind of thing. I made a mental note about Marcus Webb. In engineering, you always have to account for external forces that might compromise your structure. I want surveillance on Grant, I said. Full package, where he goes, who he sees, what he does. And I want to know if he's still seeing Jessica. That's going to be expensive. Pete, I'm about to be a single father with full custody of 2 kids and a house that's finally going to appreciate in value without my wife redecorating it every 6 months. I can afford expensive. The surveillance started that weekend. Grant was predictable, which made Pete's job easier. Breakfast at the country club, office until lunch, long lunches with various women, back to the office for a few hours, then dinner and drinks with whoever he was working on that week. Wednesday evening, Pete called with an update. You're going to love this, he said. Grant's got a new project. Married woman, husband's a doctor, lives in that fancy development off Maple Street. I got pictures of them at the Hilton yesterday afternoon. Same pattern? Identical. Flowers, expensive lunch, afternoon delight at a nice hotel. This guy's got no imagination. What about Jessica? Haven't seen them together since she got served, but she's been calling him. A lot. My guy intercepted some texts. She's not handling the situation well. That made sense. Jessica had always been dependent on external validation. Take away her marriage, her home, her financial security, and her boyfriend, and she'd be spiraling into full panic mode. Keep watching, I told Pete, and see if you can find out more about this Marcus Webb character. I have a feeling we're going to be hearing from him soon. I was right. Marcus Webb looked exactly like what you'd expect from a guy who intimidates people for a living. 6'2", probably 220, with the kind of build that suggested he'd played football in college before discovering that breaking kneecaps paid better than selling insurance. He was waiting by my truck when I left work Thursday evening, leaning against a black Escalade like he owned the parking lot. Alex Kavanaugh? That's me. Marcus Webb. I work for Grant Pritchard. He'd like to have a conversation with you. Tell Grant if he wants to talk, he can call my lawyer. Marcus smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile you'd want to see in a dark alley. Mr. Pritchard thinks maybe you've gotten the wrong idea about his relationship with your wife. He's hoping you might be willing to reconsider this whole divorce thing. My relationship with my wife ended when she started screwing your boss. The divorce is just paperwork. See, that's where you're wrong, Marcus said, pushing off from his truck. Divorce is expensive. Custody battles are expensive. Court costs, lawyer fees, private investigators. It all adds up. Mr. Pritchard is prepared to help with those expenses if you're willing to be reasonable. I had to admire the approach. Grant was trying to buy his way out of the mess, probably figuring that most husbands would take the money and disappear quietly. Keep his name out of the divorce proceedings, avoid the public embarrassment, maintain his reputation in town. How much? $50,000, cash. All you have to do is file a no-fault divorce, agree to joint custody, and keep Mr. Pritchard's name out of the proceedings. That's generous. Mr. Pritchard values his privacy. I bet he does. What happens if I say no? Marcus's smile got a little colder. Well, that would be unfortunate. See, Mr. Pritchard has a lot of friends in this town. Business connections, political connections, people who might not be inclined to work with someone who's causing problems for a respected member of the community. Are you threatening me, Marcus? Just explaining how things work around here. Small town, word gets around. Might be hard to find new clients if people think you're not trustworthy. I nodded thoughtfully, like I was actually considering the offer. The truth was, I was memorizing every word for the recording device in my shirt pocket. Pete had suggested I start carrying it after Grant's first attempt to contact me through intermediaries. I'll need time to think about it. Of course, but don't take too long. Mr. Pritchard's a patient man, but his patience has limits. Marcus climbed into his Escalade and drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with a decision to make. Take the money and let Grant off the hook, or stick to my plan and see how far he was willing to go to protect his reputation. It wasn't really a choice at all. That night, I called Pete and played him the recording. "Bribery and intimidation," Pete said. "Nice. You want to take this to the cops?" "Not yet. Let's see what else Grant's willing to try first." "You're playing with fire here, Alex. This Marcus guy isn't just muscle. He's smart muscle, and that makes him dangerous. I'm not worried about Marcus. I'm more concerned about what Grant might try to do to Jessica." "You still care about her?" I thought about that question for a long time. Did I still care about Jessica? She'd betrayed me, humiliated me, traumatized our children, and destroyed our family. But she was still the mother of my kids, and she was clearly in over her head with Grant and his world of intimidation and payoffs. "I care about making sure she doesn't drag the kids down with her," I finally said. "And I care about making sure Grant Pritchard learns that some people can't be bought or scared off." "Okay, what's the plan?" Phase 2. The next morning, I started making phone calls. Jessica's friends, her colleagues, her family, anyone who might have influence over her decision-making. I didn't mention the videos or the divorce proceedings. I just asked casual questions about Jessica's recent behavior, her new interests, her consulting work with local businesses. Candace Morrison was the most helpful. She'd been Jessica's closest friend since college, a real estate agent who specialized in high-end properties and high-end gossip. If anyone knew the details of Jessica's affair, it would be Candace. "Oh, Alex, I'm so glad you called," Candace said when I reached her at her office. "I've been worried about Jess lately. She seems so different." "Different how?" "Well, she's been spending a lot of time with Grant Pritchard. You know Grant, right? The developer? They've been working on some consulting project together, but honestly, it seems like more than just business." "What makes you say that?" "Little things. The way she lights up when his name comes up. How she's always checking her phone for messages, the new clothes and jewelry. Plus, she asked me not to mention their meetings to you, which seemed odd. She asked you to keep secrets from me. She said you were stressed about work, and she didn't want to bother you with business details. But Alex, between you and me, I don't think what they're doing is entirely professional." I let the silence stretch out, giving Candace time to fill it with more information. People hate awkward silences, especially people who make their living through conversation. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," she continued, "but I saw them together at the Marriott last month. They were in the bar, sitting very close together, very intimate. When Jess saw me, she looked like she'd been caught stealing." "Did you talk to her about it?" "I tried, but she brushed it off. Said they were celebrating closing a big deal. But Alex, the way they were looking at each other, that wasn't business." I thanked Candace and hung up, then immediately called Pete. "I need you to reach out to Candace Morrison," I told him. "Real estate agent, works for Coldwell Banker. She's got information about Jessica and Grant, and I think she might be willing to share more if the right person asks the right questions." "You want me to interview her?" "I want you to befriend her. Take her to lunch, let her talk, see what else she knows. Candace loves gossip, and she's starting to feel guilty about keeping Jessica's secrets. What about Grant and Marcus? Let them make the next move. I'm curious to see how far they're willing to go." I didn't have to wait long to find out. The dead roses arrived on Saturday morning. 24 black roses with a note. Some things are better left buried. No signature, but the message was clear enough. Grant was escalating from bribery to intimidation. Sam found the roses on the front porch when he went out to get the newspaper. He brought them inside with a worried look on his face. "Dad, are these for Mom?" "No, son. They're for me." "Why would someone send you dead flowers?" "Good question. How do you explain to a 14-year-old that his mother's boyfriend is trying to scare his father into silence? How do you tell him that the adult world is full of people who solve problems with threats and intimidation?" "Some people don't like it when you stand up for yourself," I said. "They try to make you scared so you'll back down." "Are you scared?" "No, Sam, I'm not scared." And I wasn't. I was angry. There's a difference. I called Pete and told him about the roses. "Classic intimidation tactic," he said. Meant to make you feel vulnerable, remind you that they know where you live. What's your security situation? Cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks. The house is buttoned up tight. Good. What about the kids? They're with me full-time now. Jessica's supervised visitation doesn't start until next week, and only if she passes a psychological evaluation. How's she handling that? Not well, according to my lawyer. She's been calling the office every day, sometimes crying, sometimes screaming. Yesterday, she showed up at the courthouse demanding to see the judge. Sounds like she's having a breakdown. Sounds like she's realizing that actions have consequences. That afternoon, I took the kids to the hardware store. Lila needed supplies for a school project, and I wanted to pick up some additional security equipment. Motion-activated floodlights, a few more cameras, maybe some reinforcement for the back door. We were in the electrical aisle when Grant Pritchard appeared at the end of the row. He looked different than he had in the videos with Jessica. Older, more tired, with the kind of stress lines around his eyes that suggested he wasn't sleeping well. Alex Kavanaugh? I moved slightly to put myself between Grant and the kids. That's me. I think we should talk. I think you should leave. Grant glanced at Sam and Lila, who were pretending to be interested in light switches while obviously listening to every word. This doesn't have to be difficult, Grant said, keeping his voice low. Jessica made a mistake, but it's over now. No reason to destroy everyone's life over one mistake. 47 mistakes, I corrected. And the only life getting destroyed here is yours. You don't understand the situation you're in. I understand it perfectly. You seduced my wife, you filmed your little adventures, and now you're trying to intimidate me into keeping quiet about it. Did I miss anything? Grant's jaw tightened. You're making enemies you can't afford to have. And you made the mistake of thinking I'd be easy to push around. Dad? Sam had moved closer, sensing the tension. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, son. This gentleman was just leaving. Grant looked at Sam, then back at me. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. Grant walked away, leaving me standing in the hardware store with my kids, and a growing sense that the situation was about to get much more complicated. That evening, I called my lawyer. Margaret, I need to know what legal options I have if Grant Pritchard continues to harass me. What kind of harassment are we talking about? I told her about Marcus Webb's visit, the dead roses, and Grant's confrontation at the hardware store. Document everything, she said. Dates, times, witnesses, physical evidence. If this escalates to actual threats or violence, we can get a restraining order. What about the divorce proceedings? Jessica's lawyer is pushing for mediation. She wants to avoid a trial, probably because she knows the evidence will be made public. No mediation. I want this to go to court. Alex, I have to advise you that a public trial could be difficult for your children. All the details will be in the court record, accessible to anyone who wants to look. The details are already accessible to anyone with Jessica's tablet password. At least, this way, there will be legal consequences. All right, I'll file a motion to reject mediation, but be prepared for Jessica's side to get more aggressive. They're going to try to paint you as vindictive and unfit for custody. Let them try. After I hung up, I sat in my office looking at the security camera feeds. The house was quiet, the kids were doing homework, everything looked normal, but I could feel the pressure building. Like the moment before a storm when the air gets thick and the birds stop singing. Grant Pritchard had made a career out of intimidating people into giving him what he wanted, but he'd never dealt with someone who built things for a living, someone who understood that the strongest structures are the ones designed to withstand external pressure. Time to show him what a properly engineered defense looked like. Pete's surveillance photos were works of art. Grant and his new conquest at the Hilton, Grant and a different woman at a restaurant across town, Grant meeting with Marcus Webb in what appeared to be a heated discussion. But the real masterpiece was Grant's reaction when he discovered his Range Rover filled with rotting shrimp. You should have seen his face, Pete said, showing me the pictures on his phone. He opens the door, gets hit with that smell, and just stands there for about 30 seconds trying to process what happened. I'd spent Sunday night on the project. 3 pounds of shrimp from the seafood counter, carefully distributed throughout Grant's air conditioning system while his truck sat in the country club parking lot. The smell would take weeks to eliminate, and every time he turned on the air conditioning, he'd get a fresh reminder that someone was playing games with him. What about the brakes? Disconnected the brake light sensor and loosened the brake fluid reservoir cap. Not enough to cause an accident, just enough to make the brakes feel spongy and trigger warning lights on his dashboard. He'll have to take it to a mechanic, and when they check the system, they'll find everything in perfect working order. Psychological warfare. Exactly. Make him paranoid. Make him wonder what else might have been tampered with. A guy like Grant depends on projecting an image of control and success. Hard to do that when your truck smells like a fish market and your brakes feel like they're about to fail. The shrimp gambit was just the opening move. That afternoon, I implemented phase 2 of my counterattack. Candace Morrison was more than willing to meet for coffee once Pete explained that he was investigating Grant Pritchard for potential fraud in connection with a real estate deal. She brought a folder full of documents and a head full of gossip that she was eager to share. I never trusted that man, Candace said, stirring her latte with unnecessary force. Too smooth, too charming. In my experience, men who try that hard to be likable are usually hiding something. What can you tell us about his relationship with Jessica Kavanaugh? Oh, that poor woman. Grant targeted her like a predator. I saw it happening, but Jessica wouldn't listen to me. He started with little compliments, then expensive gifts, then business opportunities that required them to spend time together. Did you ever see them together in compromising situations? Several times. Hotels, restaurants, even at Jessica's house when Alex was out of town. I tried to talk to her about it, but she was completely under his spell. Candace leaned forward conspiratorially. Between you and me, I think Grant was recording their encounters. Jessica mentioned something about him taking pictures, said it was just for fun, but it seemed odd to me. Pete and I exchanged glances. If Candace knew about the recordings, it was only a matter of time before the whole story became public knowledge. Has Grant approached you about keeping quiet? I asked. Not directly, but his assistant called last week asking if I'd heard any rumors about Mr. Pritchard's business practices. When I said no, she seemed relieved and mentioned that Mr. Pritchard valued loyalty among his professional contacts. Did you feel threatened? Not threatened exactly, but definitely warned. Like they were letting me know they were watching what I said. After the meeting with Candace, Pete and I drove to Grant's office building. It was a modern glass structure in the business district, the kind of place designed to impress clients with its expensive finishes and panoramic views. What's the plan? Pete asked as we sat in his car across the street. Information gathering. I want to know how his business is really doing, who his major clients are, what kind of leverage he might have in the community. Breaking and entering? Research. There's a difference. We waited until after business hours, then Pete used his lock-picking skills to get us into the building. Grant's office was on the 4th floor, behind a door marked Pritchard Development Group in gold lettering. The office was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive furniture, awards on the walls, photographs of Grant with various local politicians and business leaders. But the interesting stuff was in his desk drawers and filing cabinets. Pete photographed everything while I went through Grant's computer files. His password was Success1, which told me everything I needed to know about his imagination. The financial records painted a picture of a company living on borrowed time. 3 major developments were behind schedule and over budget. 2 clients had filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau, and Grant's personal expenses were running about $50,000 a month higher than his actual income. This guy's broke, I told Pete. He's robbing Peter to pay Paul, using deposits from new clients to cover cost overruns on existing projects. Classic Ponzi scheme structure. Not quite, but close. If he loses one major client, or if the market softens, he's finished. In Grant's personal files, I found something even more interesting. A folder labeled Insurance that contained photographs and documents related to at least 6 different women. Not just Jessica, but other married women Grant had been involved with over the past 3 years. Names, addresses, phone numbers, even copies of their husbands' financial information. He's been running this scam for years, Pete said, looking over my shoulder. Seduce married women, document the affairs, then use the evidence for leverage if he needs it. Leverage for what? Business deals, favorable contracts, silence when things go wrong. Look at this. Pete showed me a document that made my blood run cold. A contract between Pritchard Development and the city for a municipal building project, signed by a city councilman whose wife's photo was in Grant's insurance folder. He's been blackmailing people. Not blackmail exactly, more like mutually assured destruction. He keeps quiet about their affairs, they keep quiet about his business practices. I copied everything to a flash drive. Then we carefully returned the office to its original condition. By the time we left, I had enough evidence to destroy Grant Pritchard's business, his reputation, and probably send him to prison for fraud and extortion. But prison would be too easy. I had something much more creative in mind. The Riverside Elementary School talent show seemed like an unlikely venue for psychological warfare, but sometimes the best battles are fought on unexpected terrain. Lila was performing a piano piece she'd been practicing for months, and the auditorium was packed with parents, teachers, and community members, including Grant Pritchard, who was there as a community sponsor and guest judge. I'd spent the previous week preparing for this moment. The school's audio-visual system was surprisingly sophisticated, with wireless capabilities and multiple input options. During the rehearsal, I'd tested the range and compatibility of my equipment. Everything checked out perfectly. Lila's performance was flawless. She played Chopin's Minute Waltz with the kind of precision and emotion that made me proud to be her father. The audience applauded enthusiastically, and she took her bow with a huge smile on her face. Then, during the brief intermission before the next act, I activated my surprise. The large screens on either side of the stage flickered to life, displaying what appeared to be a slideshow of local business leaders and community achievements. Normal enough for a school event, but after a few innocuous slides of ribbon cuttings and charity events, the presentation took a different turn. Grant Pritchard's face appeared on screen, followed by a series of photographs documenting his extracurricular activities. Nothing explicit or inappropriate, just clear evidence of his pattern of seducing married women. Grant with Jessica at a restaurant, Grant with another woman at a hotel, Grant meeting with Marcus Webb in what was obviously a business discussion. The auditorium went dead silent. Parents looked around in confusion. Teachers scrambled to figure out what was happening, and Grant himself sat frozen in his seat like a deer in headlights. But the real surprise came when the photos were replaced by audio recordings. Grant's voice, crystal clear through the school's sound system, discussing his insurance policy with Marcus Webb. "The beauty of married women is that they have as much to lose as you do," Grant's recorded voice said. "Document everything, keep copies safe, and you've got leverage for life." "What if one of the husbands finds out?" Marcus's voice responded. "Then you remind them that their wife's reputation is at stake too. Most guys will take money and keep quiet rather than face the public humiliation." The recording continued for another 30 seconds before I cut the feed and the screens went dark. The auditorium erupted in chaos. Parents were talking over each other. Teachers were trying to restore order, and Grant was pushing through the crowd toward the exit. I caught up with him in the parking lot. "Leaving so soon?" I asked. "I thought you were supposed to judge the rest of the performances." Grant spun around, his face red with rage and humiliation. "You son of a witch! You planned this!" "Planned what, a talent show? I just came to watch my daughter play piano." "You know what I'm talking about? That slideshow, those recordings?" "Oh, that! Yeah, I thought the community should know what kind of man they've been doing business with." Grant stepped closer, his hands clenched into fists. "You have no idea what you've just done. I'll destroy you for this." "With what? Your business is built on fraud and blackmail. Your reputation is shot, and half the town just heard you admit to extorting married couples. What exactly are you going to destroy me with?" "I still have the videos of your wife." "So do I, along with videos of you with 5 other women, financial records showing your company is bankrupt, and evidence that you've been blackmailing city officials. Want to compare collections?" Grant's face went pale as the implications sank in. He'd been playing a game he thought he understood, but he'd never faced an opponent who was willing to go nuclear. "This isn't over," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet." Grant got into his Range Rover, which still smelled like rotting seafood, and drove away. I stood in the parking lot watching his taillights disappear, knowing that I'd just crossed a line I could never uncross. But as I walked back into the school to watch the rest of Lila's talent show, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. For the first time since Sam had found those videos, I felt like I was in control of the situation. The war was far from over, but I'd just won the most important battle. Jessica's psychological evaluation didn't go well. According to my lawyer, she'd spent most of the session crying and blaming everyone, except herself, for the situation. The psychologist's report described her as emotionally unstable, lacking insight into her behavior, and potentially harmful to the children's emotional development. Her supervised visitation was postponed indefinitely. "She's not handling this well," Margaret told me during our weekly update call. "Her lawyer says she's been talking about reconciliation, claiming that you're being vindictive, and that the whole thing was just a misunderstanding." 47 misunderstandings. Her exact words were, "Alex is destroying our family over a few mistakes." She seems to genuinely believe that she's the victim here. That sounded like Jessica. She'd always had a talent for rewriting history to cast herself in the best possible light. When she got caught lying about the credit cards, it was because I didn't give her enough spending money. When she got pulled over for speeding, it was because the speed limit signs were poorly marked. When she had an affair with Grant Pritchard, it would somehow be my fault for working too much. What about Grant? Haven't heard anything from his side since the school incident. But word around town is that his business is in serious trouble. 3 clients have pulled out of deals, the city council is reviewing his municipal contracts, and his bank is asking questions about his loan applications. The school talent show had been more effective than I'd hoped. Within 24 hours, the story was all over social media and local news. Grant's face was associated with terms like fraud, extortion, and predator. His carefully constructed reputation was in ruins, but Grant wasn't finished yet. Marcus Webb was waiting in my office parking lot when I left work Friday evening. This time he wasn't alone. 2 other men sat in the Escalade, both wearing suits and expressions that suggested they weren't there to discuss real estate. "Mr. Kavanaugh," Marcus said as I approached my truck. "Mr. Pritchard would like to speak with you. Tell Mr. Pritchard he can make an appointment through my lawyer. I'm afraid he's not in a patient mood. You've caused him considerable embarrassment and financial damage." "Good." Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You seem to think this is a game. Let me explain something to you. Mr. Pritchard has invested a lot of time and money in building his reputation in this community. When someone damages that investment, he takes it personally. Are you threatening me again, Marcus?" "I'm explaining the situation. Your little stunt at the school was clever, but it was also a declaration of war. Mr. Pritchard is prepared to fight that war with every resource at his disposal." "What resources? His business is collapsing, his reputation is destroyed, and half the town knows he's a fraud. What's he going to fight with?" Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila envelope. "These resources." Inside the envelope were photographs of Sam and Lila, walking to school, playing in our backyard, getting into my truck. Professional surveillance photos taken with a telephoto lens. "Your children are beautiful," Marcus said. "Be a shame if something happened to them because their father couldn't be reasonable." The world went red around the edges. I'd been angry before, but this was different. This was pure, focused rage. Marcus had just made the one mistake that would guarantee his destruction. "If you or Grant or anyone associated with either of you goes anywhere near my children," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I will end you." Tough words from a man who builds buildings for a living. "I don't just build buildings, Marcus, I also know how to tear them down." I took out my phone and showed Marcus a photo of my own. Him and Grant taken through a telephoto lens standing outside what appeared to be a warehouse. "Recognize this place?" I asked. "It's the storage facility where Grant keeps his insurance collection. All those photos and videos of married women, all those financial records, all that evidence of fraud and extortion. Pete and I found it 2 days ago." Marcus's confident expression wavered slightly. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You and Grant are going to disappear from my life. You're going to stop calling, stop following me, stop threatening my family. Grant is going to leave town, sell his business to pay back his creditors, and never contact Jessica again. And if we don't, then I release everything. Every photo, every video, every financial record, every piece of evidence I've collected over the past month. I send it to the FBI, the IRS, the state attorney general, and every news outlet in the region. Grant goes to prison for fraud and extortion, you go down as his accomplice, and everyone whose lives you've destroyed gets their revenge." I put my phone away and stepped closer to Marcus. "But if you threaten my children again, I won't wait for the legal system. I'll handle it personally." Marcus looked at the photos in his hands, then at me, then at his associates in the Escalade. Whatever he saw in my expression convinced him that I wasn't bluffing. "This is a mistake," he said, but he was already backing toward his truck. "The mistake was yours. You should have stayed in whatever hole Grant crawled out of." Marcus and his friends drove away, leaving me standing in the parking lot with a clear understanding of what had to happen next. Grant had escalated to threatening my children. The gloves were officially off. Time for the final phase. The beauty of being a structural engineer is that you understand how things are built, and more importantly, how they can be brought down. Every building has weak points. stress concentrations where a small amount of pressure can cause catastrophic failure. Grant Pritchard's life was no different. I spent the weekend mapping out his vulnerabilities. Financial pressure from failed developments, legal exposure from his blackmail schemes, social isolation from his destroyed reputation, and now psychological stress from knowing that I had enough evidence to send him to prison for the next 20 years. But I wanted more than just his destruction. I wanted his complete and public humiliation. Monday morning, I put the plan into motion. Phase 1 was financial. I'd identified 3 of Grant's major creditors and provided them with evidence of his fraudulent business practices. By noon, 2 of them had filed lawsuits and the 3rd had called in his loans. Grant's business accounts were frozen pending investigation. Phase 2 was legal. I delivered copies of Grant's insurance collection to the FBI's white-collar crime unit, along with a detailed explanation of his extortion schemes. Federal agents raided his office and storage facility before he could destroy the evidence. Phase 3 was personal. Grant lived in a mansion on the hill overlooking the town, the kind of house designed to impress people with your success and importance. It had a circular driveway, manicured gardens, and a 3-car garage filled with expensive toys. The perfect symbol of everything Grant thought made him better than everyone else. Wednesday night, Pete and I paid it a visit. We didn't break anything or steal anything. We just rearranged things. Every piece of furniture moved 6 inches to the left. Every picture frame tilted at a 15-degree angle. Every book on his shelves turned backwards. Every clock in the house set to a different time. Small changes, barely noticeable individually, but together they created an environment of subtle wrongness that would drive a control freak like Grant slowly insane. We also left a few additions. Motion-activated speakers hidden throughout the house, programmed to play random sounds at random intervals. Footsteps, doors closing, phones ringing, whispers. Nothing loud enough to wake the neighbors, just enough to make Grant question his sanity. The piece de resistance was in his bedroom, a framed photo of Jessica, taken from one of his surveillance videos, placed on his nightstand where he'd see it first thing every morning. A reminder of how this whole mess had started. Thursday morning, Grant called the police to report a break-in. When they arrived, they found no signs of forced entry, nothing missing, no evidence of vandalism, just a paranoid man insisting that someone had been in his house moving things around. The police report described Grant as agitated and possibly delusional. Friday afternoon, Grant snapped. He showed up at my office building screaming in the lobby about persecution and harassment. Security cameras captured the entire meltdown as he accused me of destroying his life, ruining his business, and driving him crazy. "You think you've won?" he shouted as security guards restrained him. "You think you can destroy me and walk away? I'll show you what real destruction looks like." The video went viral within hours. Grant Pritchard, successful businessman and community leader, having a complete psychological breakdown in a corporate lobby, the final nail in the coffin of his reputation. But Grant wasn't finished yet. Desperate men do desperate things, and Grant was about as desperate as they come. Saturday night, he came for me. The security system woke me at 2:17 a.m. Motion sensors in the backyard, followed by cameras detecting movement near the rear entrance. I checked the feeds from my phone and saw a figure in dark clothing trying to force the back door. Grant had finally decided to handle things personally. I'd been preparing for this possibility since Marcus had shown me those photos of my children. The house was equipped with more than just cameras and alarms. I'd installed a comprehensive defense system that would have made Kevin McAllister proud. I activated the house's defensive measures from my phone, then woke Sam and Lila. "Dad?" Sam was groggy, but alert. "What's happening?" "Someone's trying to break into the house. I need you and your sister to go into my bedroom, lock the door, and call emergency. Tell them there's an intruder and give them our address." "Are you going to be okay?" "I'll be fine. Just stay in the bedroom until the police arrive." I waited until I heard my bedroom door lock, then went downstairs to deal with Grant. He'd managed to force the back door, but that's as far as he got. The moment he stepped into the kitchen, motion sensors triggered a paint bomb that covered him head to toe in bright orange latex paint. Blinded and disoriented, he stumbled forward into a tripwire that activated a second paint bomb, this one filled with glitter. Grant looked like a Halloween decoration that had been hit by a rainbow. "Alex!" he screamed, wiping paint from his eyes. "Where are you, you coward?" "Right here, Grant." He spun toward my voice, but I was safely positioned behind the kitchen island with a clear view of his location. The security cameras were recording everything, and I'd activated a live stream to Pete's phone so there would be independent witnesses. "You destroyed my life," Grant shouted, stumbling toward me. "My business, my reputation, everything I worked for. You destroyed your own life when you decided to become a predator." Grant reached into his jacket and pulled out what looked like a tool. I tensed, ready to dive for cover, but then realized it was just a paint tool. He fired it at me, missing by several feet and hitting the refrigerator instead. "Really, Grant? A paint tool? I'm going to mark you the way you marked me. Everyone will know what you did." He fired again, this time hitting the ceiling and covering himself with more paint droplets. The man was having a complete breakdown, and it was all being recorded in high definition. "Grant, you need to stop this. The police are on their way." "I don't care about the police. I don't care about anything anymore. You took everything from me." "I didn't take anything from you. I just showed everyone who you really are." Grant threw the paint tool at me and charged around the kitchen island. I'd anticipated this move and triggered another defensive measure. A section of the floor, weakened and rigged with a pressure plate, gave way under his weight. Grant fell through into the basement, landing in a pile of foam padding I'd placed there specifically for this purpose. He wasn't hurt, just trapped and covered in even more paint and glitter. "Let me out of here," he screamed from the basement. "Can't do that, Grant. You broke into my house, threatened me with a tool, and tried to assault me. I'm just defending myself." The police arrived 10 minutes later, followed by paramedics and Pete Romano. They found Grant in the basement, covered in paint and glitter, ranting about persecution and revenge. The security footage clearly showed him breaking into my house and attacking me with a tool. He was arrested on charges of breaking and entering, assault, and terroristic threatening. "You okay?" Pete asked as we watched the paramedics check Grant for injuries. "Never better." "What about Jessica?" That was a good question. With Grant in jail and facing serious federal charges, Jessica was completely on her own. No boyfriend, no money, no home, no prospects. She'd burned every bridge and alienated everyone who might have helped her. "Jessica's not my problem anymore," I said. "She made her choices." As if summoned by our conversation, Jessica's BMW pulled into my driveway. She got out of the car looking like she hadn't slept in days, her hair disheveled and her clothes wrinkled. She walked past the police cars and paramedics like they weren't there. "Alex," she said when she reached me, "we need to talk." "No, we don't. Please. I know I made mistakes, but this has gone too far. Grant's in jail. I've lost everything. The kids won't even talk to me. You've won. Can't we just stop this and try to work things out?" I looked at my wife of 16 years, the mother of my children, the woman who had shared my bed and my dreams and my life. She looked small and broken, nothing like the confident woman who had seduced Grant Pritchard and destroyed our family. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered Sam's face when he found those videos. I remembered Lila asking why Mommy didn't live with us anymore. I remembered the photos of my children that Marcus had shown me, the implicit threat against the two people I loved most in the world. "Jessica," I said quietly, "you didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to have an affair. You chose to film it. You chose to bring that man into our lives and our home. You chose to put our children at risk by getting involved with criminals. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now you have to live with the consequences." Jessica started crying then, the ugly kind of crying that comes from complete despair. But I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no desire to comfort her. She'd burned out every emotion I'd ever felt for her except contempt. "The divorce will be final next week," I told her. "You'll get nothing except supervised visitation with the kids, and only if you complete a year of counseling and stay clean from pills and alcohol." "I don't do pills. The court-ordered pills test says otherwise." "White powder, Jessica. Really?" She looked shocked that I knew, but it had been easy enough to discover. Desperate people make desperate choices, and Jessica had been making a lot of bad choices lately. "I need help," she whispered. "Then get help, but get it somewhere else." I walked back toward my house, leaving Jessica standing in the driveway with the police and paramedics and the wreckage of her life. At the front door, I turned back for one last look. She was still crying, but no one was paying attention to her anymore. Grant was being loaded into an ambulance for a psychological evaluation. The police were finishing their reports. Pete was giving a statement about the security footage. Jessica Kavanaugh, who had once been the center of attention at every social gathering, was completely invisible. Just another casualty of her own bad decisions. I went inside and locked the door behind me. 6 months later, Grant Pritchard was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for fraud, extortion, and racketeering. Marcus Webb got 5 years as an accessory. Jessica completed her court-ordered rehabilitation program and was granted limited supervised visitation with Sam and Lila. She never remarried. Last I heard, she was working as a waitress in a diner 2 towns over, living in a studio apartment and driving a 15-year-old Honda. She sends the kids birthday cards and Christmas presents, but she's never tried to contact me again. Sam and Lila are doing well. Sam's in high school now, captain of the debate team and planning to study engineering like his old man. Lila's discovered she has a talent for photography, which seems appropriate given how this whole story started with pictures. As for me, I rebuilt my life the same way I build everything else, with a solid foundation, quality materials, and careful attention to structural integrity. I've learned that some things, once broken, can't be repaired, but they can be replaced with something stronger. I kept one souvenir from the whole experience, a framed photo on my desk of Grant Pritchard covered in orange paint and glitter being arrested in my basement. It's a reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's building something better from the ruins of what came before.